The year was 2022, and COVID was still running rampant. And just like the Summer Olympic Games in 2020, the Winter Olympics were going to be closed to the public. China had been awarded the honor of hosting back in 2015, where only a select few people had even heard of the word coronavirus. But here they were in 2022, with none of the tourism but all of the scrutiny. With everyone watching, it was more important than ever that everything ran smoothly. They were not going to let anything embarrass them on the world stage. A few days earlier on Douyin, the Chinese equivalent of TikTok, a family influencer was beginning to form a small cult following. The account was run by a man named Dong Zimin. He'd post his daily life raising 8 children in rural China and the struggles of living in poverty. Thanks to his presence on social media, Dong began receiving donations to help support him and the children. It even got to the point where one of the rooms in his house got completely taken up by clothes that were gifted to him. However, it turns out that just like every family influencer before him, Dong was hiding something truly sinister. Due to his Douyin account, Dong had attracted the attention of another influencer in the area called Zhujiao Brother Yishu. Brother Yishu was known for his charitable donations around the Zhujiao area, and because of this, he went to visit Dong and his family. At first, everything seemed pretty normal until he got talking to one of the children, whose job it was to feed their mother, in which he captured this video.
你好，冷吗？不冷，我给你拿个衣服穿上吧。我给你拿个衣服穿上吧。我给你拿个衣服去，好不好？我给你拿件衣服。我看你咱有爱心一次捐出衣服，我给你拿一件。你这饭凉了吗？饭凉了吗？你能不能我这样说话，你能不能听懂？我跟你说话能听懂吧？
I've decided to blur the video because I don't feel comfortable showing the face of the woman. However, I will describe what the video captured. Behind the blur, there is a woman between the ages of 30 and 40 with a dog collar around her neck chained to the wall. It is freezing in there, and yet she is only wearing a small jumper, and she is not wearing any shoes. If you look closely, the food on the table is frozen, which just further goes to show how freezing cold her prison cell was. Brother Yishu then goes and grabs her a coat from a room that is storing all the clothes. He then leaves without unchaining her, but not before posting this video to Douyin. The video immediately goes viral, with NPR estimating that over 1.9 billion people have viewed the clip across multiple different platforms. Many of the people who watched the clip assumed that the woman was a victim of human trafficking, which is a serious and prevalent problem in the rural parts of China. This is further supported by the fact that prior to this video being filmed, it was believed that Dong Zimin was a single father, as he never posted or mentioned any sort of mother in his content up to this point. Amongst the public outcry of this obviously abused and neglected woman, the authorities released their first statement regarding the situation. The same day the video was posted, the Feng County Propaganda Department, which is a local organization within the CCP, stated that the woman was legally married to Dong Zimin, and the reason she was locked outside was because she was severely mentally ill and a danger to both Dong and the children. They also stated that she was not a victim of human trafficking. They said at present she had already been treated, and they were providing further assistance to make sure that the family had a warm Lunar New Year. Needless to say, people were not happy with this response. They stated that even if the woman was supposedly mentally ill and violent, she was also obviously abused and neglected. To understand why the Feng County Propaganda Department would release this statement, even though it completely underplays the whole situation, it's important to note that mental health, especially in the rural parts of China, is heavily stigmatized. The reason for this is because that in the rural parts of China, they still maintain a lot of the traditional folk beliefs. And in these traditions, your physical health is tied very closely to your behavior. This means that if you're ill, and particularly mentally ill, that it is viewed as your own fault and the result of a personal moral failure. This is obviously not true, however, it does kind of explain why the Feng County Propaganda Department would believe that simply just stating that the woman was mentally ill would kind of justify the family's treatment of her. However, people were not buying it. The video was now receiving countrywide attention and had reached the cities, which have a significantly more progressive population, especially regarding attitudes towards mental health. This caused the government to release a second statement only 2 days after the first, in which they said that the woman was a beggar that had been taken in by Dong's father in 1998, who has now passed away. Shortly after, Dong and the woman got married. However, at the time of their marriage, they never verified the woman's identity. They then stated that the woman was currently in a mental institute and the children had been taken into state care. And although never directly accusing Dong of human trafficking, they did open an investigation. So far, I've refrained from using the woman's name. This is because I just want to try and keep at least some degree of privacy for her. The government at the time was referring to her by the name of Yang, however this is shown to be incorrect. Many people were not believing what the government was saying, and they took it upon themselves to try and figure out who this woman was. So they started comparing her to photos of missing children from around 20 years ago. Distrust in the Chinese government had never been higher. This was because they were just censoring everything that related to the Zhujiao chained woman and her 8 children. Additionally, no state-run news broadcaster ever ran the story. The only thing that was left uncensored was the government's second response, which had over 190 million views and 50,000 comments. This just shows just how big of a story it was in China at the time. The reason why censorship was so severe was because this was a critical time for the Chinese government. As I mentioned earlier, they were only a few days away from opening the Winter Olympic Games, and no one had anything better to do than to watch it. So this was a period in which the whole world had their eyes on China, and they were going through this huge scandal about how prevalent human trafficking is in their country. So pretty much they were doing anything they could to stop news of the Zhujiao chained woman from reaching the Western news outlets, which they did pretty effectively. No one I've talked to has ever remembered this happening, despite them having watched the 2022 Winter Olympic Games. To highlight the extent the Chinese government was going to stop people from investigating this story, is they actually closed down the whole village in which this occurred and stopped any non-residents from getting in. They also had guards around Dong's house to stop people from investigating. They did such a good job of stopping information from getting out that here I am in the year of our Lord 2025 and I'm struggling to paint a cohesive picture of what actually happened. Because the story never reached the Western media outlets, it's just made researching this video so incredibly difficult. And because there is only a few sources on this, I've tried my best to portray the facts as accurately as I can. However, some of these reports will say conflicting things. So moving forward, if there is any critical facts to the situation, I will kind of preface it saying that there is conflicting reports on it. But most of the little things I've just tried my best to present as accurately as I can. Many members of the Chinese public were not satisfied with the government's response to the whole situation. This actually caused 2 members of the public to try and find the mental hospital in which the woman was staying at, just to check if she was okay and to try and confirm what the government was saying was true. Many people also rightly pointed out that if this woman was so mentally ill that she had to be kept in a shed on the outside of the house, how was she able to have 8 children? This is the point in which I'm going to have to discuss something pretty sensitive. And I know this whole video is discussing a sensitive topic, but this aspect in particular. And I normally don't like critiquing other countries because I believe that it's just not my place if I don't live there. However, that belief can only stretch so far. I bring this up because in China, there is no laws prohibiting marital SA. Well, there is and there isn't. Marital SA sometimes gets pushed under the umbrella of domestic violence, which is illegal. But however, in the law that's actually prohibiting SA, there is an exemption if the violence happens between a husband and wife. Because there is one law that allows it, and there's one law that kind of prohibits it, it means prosecuting marital SA is borderline impossible. Many advocacy groups are trying to get this changed. However, as it currently stands, you could try Dong for unlawful imprisonment and abuse. However, you couldn't try him for forcefully impregnating his wife because in the eyes of the law, he did not need consent. Although, have no fear, Dong is going to prison. The people kept the pressure on, demanding justice. This caused the government to issue a third response. This time, they said the woman was from Yagu village. This was located over 1,800 miles away from where she was found in Zhujiao. Apparently, in 1996, when the woman was still a teenager, her mother entrusted one of the people of her village to take her to a medical appointment. However, this can't be confirmed because the mother has since passed away. During this journey, according to the villager known as Sang, the woman just wandered away. It's important to note that at this time, it was also revealed that Yang was not the woman's true name. However, it is here that she is given the name that is used for the rest of this whole ordeal. However, I will not be providing it, even though it is heavily debated whether or not this is her actual name. Immediately after this statement was issued, people began questioning the government's account. They had blatantly lied in the past, and they also didn't really provide a lot of key details. Like, they never stated the relationship between this villager Sang and her mother, and why on earth she would entrust her to take her on this seemingly really long journey. And they also didn't state what kind of medical issue required her to go on this huge trip. Additionally, people were confused, how do you just lose someone? If someone just wanders away from you, you don't just leave and go, what can you do? You go find that person. And so just a lot of things weren't adding up. A lot of people were just not buying this, which actually caused the government to take action by arresting both Dong and the villager known as Sang under the suspicion of human trafficking. This brings us to the court case where everything comes to light. Here it was confirmed, to the shock of literally no one, that the woman was indeed a victim of human trafficking. Here it was revealed that the woman was sold several times before ending up with Dong. This is where I've read some conflicting reports. In some accounts, it says that the woman was sold twice before ending up with Dong, while in other accounts it says that she was sold as many as 5 times. Some of these reports also say that she was initially sold for 5,000 yuan, which is roughly around 700 USD, while other reports say that that was the price in which she was sold to Dong. But at the end of the day, none of this really matters. All that matters is that they were able to confirm that she was indeed a victim of human trafficking and that Dong was guilty of imprisoning her. It was also mentioned that the woman did have schizophrenia. However, her condition didn't really worsen to its current state until Dong forced her to have his 3rd child. This matched a lot of the theories at the time because there were some reports from the villagers stating that when the woman first arrived, she was very well spoken and some believe that she was educated. In the end, Dong was sentenced to the insultingly short prison term of 9 years, as well as 5 other people were sentenced who were in some way involved in the buying and selling of the woman, and they were sentenced between 8 to 11 years. After the trial, the woman remained in the mental institute because after 26 years since 1996, in which she was first abducted, to 2022, in which the video was released, she just suffered such extreme abuse that living a normal life was kind of not really an option, as well as she did indeed have quite severe mental health issues. However, her life is now significantly better as she is far away from Dong Zimin. However, this story has one final twist, and it ends where it began, with Zhujiao brother Yishu, the vlogger who originally found her. After the release of the video, brother Yishu was contacted by someone living in the same village as Dong, saying that the woman in the video was not the only one. In exchange for a small donation, the villager said that they would show brother Yishu where this other woman was. That's when he found this. I've once again blurred this woman's face, and I can only show you a photo because the original video has been scrubbed from the internet. However, reports from people who have seen the video describe what appears to be a mentally ill woman wriggling around, unable to get up. The villager who showed brother Yishu this woman stated that her husband had bought her for over 20 years ago for 1,000 yuan, which is roughly around 140 USD. They stated that the man would frequently beat her in the early years, and she was forced to have 2 children. One of the children, who is now an adult, has contacted brother Yishu and said that the reason the woman was on the floor is because she is ill and is unable to get up, and so they thought putting her in a bed would be dangerous. The villagers stated that it was an open secret that people knew that these women were there, but everyone turned a blind eye. They also said that the local government had full knowledge of the human trafficking going on in the area, but did nothing about it. It's never been confirmed whether or not this woman is a victim of human trafficking. However, considering everything that happened with Yang, it's more than likely. There is also almost no information about the second woman at all, besides the original video that has since been deleted and the accounts from Brother Yishu. There is almost no evidence suggesting that this woman even exists. This just goes to show that the Chinese government learnt from the mistakes regarding the first case and were able to successfully nip this story in the bud. It's crazy to think that this whole saga started with just one man posting the day in the life of living poor in rural China, and has ended with this huge expose about how prevalent human trafficking is, as well as the lengths the Chinese government would go to stop from Western countries finding out about it. It needs to be noted that although I did openly criticize the Chinese government, I never once criticized the Chinese people. It was because of them that they were able to keep the pressure on and make sure that this woman got justice and that Dong went to prison. 2 people were also arrested for trying to investigate what was going on. I also want to point out that although I was hard on Brother Yishu at the start of this video for not releasing the woman when he originally found her, he did end up posting that video, which led to her being released. He also posted a second video of a second woman, despite during this time the Chinese government cracking down on its censorship so much that people were not even allowed in the village. So by posting this video, he placed himself in direct opposition against the Chinese government, which I think is very, very brave and commendable. I want to end this video highlighting the efforts of the Chinese people who didn't stop at anything until justice was achieved. Evil is everywhere and not just in China. And I want to showcase the people that didn't stop at anything until that evil was beaten. I'll end this video with a quote from 2 women that went looking for the woman after she was originally released from Dong, because they wanted to make sure that she was okay and that the government wasn't lying. They said, "The world hasn't abandoned you and your sisters are coming." And they did. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of the video. I'm a small channel, so it really does help. If you enjoyed the video, maybe consider leaving a like, or if you're feeling particularly adventurous, even subscribing. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope I'll be seeing you in the next one.